This episode is about minutes 71 through 75 of The Rise of Skywalker with returning guest Kris, also known as StarWarsLawyer.
How's it going?
Hello there, and welcome to Star Wars Music Minute, where we celebrate the music and sound of Star Wars 5 cinematic minutes at a time. I'm Kris Tan, but you can call me Xanthi, and today is all about minutes 71 through 75 of Star Wars Episode 9, The Rise of Skywalker. In this excerpt of the film, Finn and Jannah connect about their Stormtrooper pasts, and Rey sets off for the Death Star wreckage all by herself. I'm really pleased to have Kris back to the show. You may know him as StarWarsLawyer, and I think this is maybe your third time. And yeah, welcome back.
Yeah, everything good happens in threes, right?
That's true. So this is your last time on the show ever. I'm just kidding.
Well, yeah, no. Then I got 4 and 5, and then I come back for 6.
Then you
and
get
then,
another 3.
Yeah.
Yeah. One of the things I really like about this movie actually are, like, Jannah is one of my favorite new additions to the Star Wars, to the sequel trilogy and the Star Wars universe. And I thought it was really special and a seed of something that could be more. When Finn and Jannah started to connect about their pasts, I was like, oh, now that's interesting. Like, that's cool to know that there's a lot more of them. Yeah. And I know that you have expressed many thoughts about Finn and Jannah and your ideas that you have. So I thought I really wanted to talk to you about this.
Well, that's perfect. You sent me the message, and I was just like, oh boy, I get to talk about Finn and Jannah? I hope you're prepared.
I am prepared. And we have some other really great stuff in these minutes too. With Rey going to the Death Star wreckage and everything, it'll be a good time. We have a lot to talk about.
Oh yeah, what I remember the first time that you invited me on the show, and I was like, how are you going to talk about 5 minutes of Star Wars? Because I was just like, you think about a movie and you think about specific scenes, but especially when it comes to something like Star Wars, every 5 minutes is jam-packed with something.
Yep. Yeah. I mean, it's amazing how long 5 minutes of the film can stretch out in a conversation. There's actually so much to talk about. Maybe we should just start by listening to the beginning of the minutes.
Yeah.
I mean, in fact, we're jumping right into conversation, I believe. Almost, yeah. All right. Let's get started.
Hello.
So the droids are mingling with the Orbaks.
What a dreadful situation. Is every day like this for you people? Madness.
Did we ever find his volume control?
It's an 06, but should work.
Thank you.
Now we're on the Millennium Falcon.
This is a first order part.
There's an old cruiser on the West Ridge. Stripped for parts. The one we were assigned to. The one we escaped in.
Okay, wait. You were first order?
Not by choice. We were conscripted as kids. All of us. I was TZ-1719. Stormtrooper.
FN-2187.
You?
I never knew there were more.
Deserters. All of us here were stormtroopers. We mutinied at the Battle of Enset Island. They told us to fire on civilians.
Now we have music coming in.
We wouldn't do it. We laid our weapons down.
All of you?
The whole company. I don't even know how it happened. It wasn't a decision, really. It was like...
An instinct.
Okay, let's stop there before we get to the next part. Yeah, already I'm just realizing in the script, what does he say? There were more of you? I never knew there were more, which kind of gives another, it's kind of another version of there are more of us.
Yeah. And I think about that is, and I'm just gonna touch on some of the things that I'll get on later, is that we know, like with the Bad Batch, for example, that there were clones that started to question the Empire. Obviously, the Bad Batch, defected, and Crosshair eventually got there. but we can see in this sort of fist, even the people that were brainwashed, conscripted from, young childhood or from birth, that as much as they are faceless soldiers, a lot of them were never presented with a choice. And for some of them, the Force presented them with a choice. And I think there's a deleted scene in The Last Jedi where I can't call it an extended scene of Finn versus Phasma's confrontation, but it's an alternate version of it. It was the original version of it, actually, where Finn points out how Phasma was the one that brought the shields down on Starkiller Base and that she betrayed the First Order. And then you see the stormtroopers all start to look at each other because they realize that's actually plausible and makes sense. And then, of course, Phasma kills all of them. But that's the sort of thing is like they can think for themselves. They just haven't really been given a choice.
Right. Yeah. I mean, when you say earlier, like the Force presented them with a choice, what do you mean by that? Like, do you mean like, yeah, like the Force meaning like the universe,
Well, so I think of the Force, I think back to what Qui-Gon says in the Phantom Menace that the midichlorians tell us the will of the Force. And I think what Star Wars has shown us, especially over the past few years, is that everybody in some way has access to the Force. It's like a door. So for some people, it's cracked open a little bit. Some people, it's a bit wider. So I think at that point where they're at Ansett Island, it's probably how I imagine it because we don't have it. We don't have that story. Is they get the order, they have that moment of quiet where they're contemplating taking life, innocent life, and the Force is speaking to them at that moment to say, "This is not the way you should do this," or "This is not what you should do," and then they all drop their weapons. I mean, in a universe like this, I can't see that as being anything but the Force, and I'll talk about why that is later on.
I really like that. Yeah, that I think that makes. I mean, I could also believe it. I could believe it like some other way, but also it doesn't matter because there's no way we're going to prove, and I don't want anyone to prove whether the Force was or wasn't there because the Force is just all around us. Yeah, but I really like that visual, the visual I'm getting in my head, which is like I'm imagining the Force is kind of the midichlorians or whatever, the will of the Force, and maybe various stormtroopers. Some of them have the door maybe open a little bit, cracked open a little bit more, and so I can imagine like the way that it might ripple and like ripple through them, and yeah, ooh, I like that. And of course, we're about to get to the part that I stopped us at, which is going to be like when Finn kind of says, it's the Force, an instinct, a feeling. And I think that validated for me, like something that that it seems like Finn has been hinting at the whole movie in small ways. Yeah.
Even more so in the book.
Yeah, tell me about the book, the novelization.
Okay, so let me bring up. I have notes to tell me which pages. So this first one. Okay. All right. So I'll get to the scene once we're done to it because it does tell something slightly different. Some things I like, especially when he talks about Finn and Poe later and Finn and Rey and their relationship. But when they're back on Pisana and Rey is sitting there with her lightsaber activated and you don't see Kylo Ren's ship yet on screen and Finn and Poe are on Ochi's ship, Finn peers out of the cockpit viewport and the book, I'm going to read it. It says, "The strangest thing happened. In yearning to help her and reaching for her, he sensed something, a danger, a presence. 'It's Ren,' he whispered." So in his, desire to help Rey, he taps into the Force without even realizing it. And so then he's like, "Oh no, it's probably just a bad feeling." And it's just kind of something that they build on. And you see hints of that in the movie, but it's a bit more explicit in the book.
Yeah, especially in that particular part, the it's Ren part. I think actually, like in this set of minutes, and I'm excited to get to it, like later on in these minutes, I think there is a maybe more explicit to me version of that occurs.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Do you want to read more from the book, or shall I continue playing so that we can get to the part that has the Force stuff? Okay.
Yeah, keep playing.
And I should mention the kind of the string music that comes in. The music, it's like sentimental string or an underscore. It starts while Jannah is recounting the mutiny. Yeah. And the music actually is not just like random new music. That music, we actually hear it in The Phantom Menace too. And it's probably just a reused bit. In Frank Leeman's complete catalog of the musical themes of Star Wars, he just calls that neutral conversation music. So we do get the neutral conversation music there. Okay.
Feeling.
A feeling.
The Force. The Force brought me here. Brought me to Rey and Poe.
You say that like you're sure it's real.
It's real. I wasn't sure then, but I am now. What is it, buddy?
Yeah. So just to back up a little bit, if Jannah has just said, I don't even know how it happened. It wasn't a decision, really. It was like, and then Finn jumps right in, an instinct, a feeling. Yeah, which goes along with what you were saying, Kris. And of course, we hear the Force theme and we hear the full thing play out, not just a little small phrase. And yeah, how like that affected me a lot when I was in the theater, when I was watching this for the first time. Tell me your thoughts and feelings about that, and about like not just the content of the scene, but like the execution of it.
So I remember being in the theater and I'm thinking, and I've been waiting two movies or well, I guess one movie or a movie and a half, I guess by this point. Like, all right, like show me Finn using the Force. Like, I don't need a little bit. Like, even when Leia used the Force in The Last Jedi, I was thrilled because I was like, I think if I were to change one thing about the Return of the Jedi, it would be instead of Leia blasting that stormtrooper when on Endor, when Han is like covering her, she like force pushes. Like, that'd be the only thing I would change because I want to see Leia use the Force more. But I think that for me, that was confirmation that Finn was Force sensitive, because that was debated even after The Force Awakens and after The Last Jedi. For me, like, that was confirmation because he's talking about the Force and the Force theme's playing. And usually we don't have non-Force sensitive characters talking about the Force. The one exception being Han in The Force Awakens. And we know at that point he's not Force sensitive, but he is the Obi-Wan character at that point.
So you're saying this moment was your confirmation, or you're saying confirmation was in The Last Jedi?
This was confirmation for me that he was, even though I knew it all along. But yeah, this was the confirmation for me, and especially later on in this scene, I think further reinforces it when he talks to Poe after this part. The novelization is not that much different between their conversation, but there are little hints where right after he says F 2187 and she says you, he nodded and then he grinned and he's like, someone like him, he couldn't wait to tell Rey, which, I just love Finn and Rey's relationship.
Yeah, I think all movie he's been trying to tell Rey that he's Force sensitive.
Yes, which as a movie trope, I have to tell you something, I hate. I really don't. I like, because 9 times out of 10, especially when it's between a man and a woman, it's usually someone has feelings for the other. And in the slim chance where they have like extra normal abilities, usually that comes into play where they're able to use it to get it out, which I think annoyed me in the scene where they fall into, like, they're in the quicksand.
Yep.
Because I would have been like, all right, if you have this, like, let's use it to get out or something, like
Yeah.
that would have been the time. But they were trying to hold it in. So that's why when he kept trying to tell her something, I was thinking, I'm like, okay, he's going to tell her he has feelings for her, but I'm like, it's kind of late in a trilogy to do
Yeah.
that.
Yeah. That would have been very awkward.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because what could they do with it? They wouldn't even be able to have time to do anything with that.
Yeah. Besides, like, you get like a kiss during the celebration. That's about it. Like, so I like after 8 happened, I was like, okay, they're not going to go in the direction of Finn. And actually, I think even after 7, after the writer of the Force Awakens novelization said that she had pinned a Finn and Rey romance, not like like they're actually doing anything, but she had put it towards a romantical subplot in there, and Disney said no, or
Oh, okay.
whoever the powers that be said no, like take that out. So,
Right. And then
after
Finn
that,
and
I was like,
Poe,
well,
the
they
actors
were never gonna.
they were never
They-
going to do that, but the actors
Yeah.
were like playing it up.
Yeah, Finn had 4 love interests in this trilogy. He had Rey, he had Poe, he had Rose, and he had Jannah,
That's so true.
and didn't end up with any of them.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess none of them ended up with anyone.
Yeah, which is also different in Star Wars.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a good point, because we do have Anakin and Padme, they do end up together, and then we do have Han and Leia, and they do end up together. So yeah, this one's just not. The way that Finn listens to Jannah, I think like I like that she's able to be upfront about her past, because that allows Finn to meet her like where she's at. Because think of how long Finn took. Like, Finn was so ashamed of being a stormtrooper, he didn't want any. He wouldn't have just offered that up. At least not like in the Force Awakens, which was much earlier in his journey, post stormtrooper life. So yeah, something about like Jannah just confidently offering up the information and being able to talk about it tells me something about maybe where she is in her journey of processing things, and also the fact that it wasn't just her, where Finn did it alone, where she had the opportunity to do it with her whole company. And so I bet that probably made it easier to reckon with afterward, whereas Finn was like just all alone when he did it.
Yeah, I think that's an excellent point. And also, like in The Last Jedi, he doesn't really have an opportunity to talk to Rose about it, because, one of the parts about The Last Jedi is deconstructing myths or legends. And even in those like few days between The Force Awakens and The Last Jedi, the legend of Finn has already grown to the point where Rose has heard about it, even though she wasn't on the front lines. So she had built up this legend of him, and he didn't get a chance to deconstruct that, which I do think is a missed opportunity. And I think that would have been really cool. But I think, that goes to your point where it's like, who could he really talk to about that sort of transition?
Yeah.
Right? Because I think even Leia growing up in the Empire, at least by the time she was like 12 or 13, I forget the specific age, in Leia, Princess of Alderaan, from a relatively early age, she knows like she's working towards rebellion.
Yeah. Yeah. Which is kind of why I like wished. I mean, I felt that post Rise of Skywalker, I assumed that they were going to do much more with Finn and Jannah and like that whole past. So hopefully we get a lot more than we have so far.
Hopefully.
Yeah. I will keep playing. Oh, I want to say something about this droid transition here.
Wasn't sure then, but I am now.
What is it, buddy? What do you mean you haven't seen her?
So now we've moved on to like a completely different idea, which is like, where's Rey? But I think like that little bit was just making me think how much the role that droids play, not just like in Star Wars, but also just in aiding transitions, like when we need kind of a sonic palette cleanser and we need something to help us transition to another idea, like just throwing in like I don't know, some droid speaking is a good way to ease the transition between like one bit of music / one scene and the next. So here they use that to great effect. And some new music comes in pretty soon after that.
I haven't seen her.
She took a skimmer?
Yeah, so I'm putting some images on screen. Basically, you know, Rey couldn't wait. She needed to go to that Death Star wreckage, and she has taken the skimmer by herself in the very choppy waters. They said they were going to wait till tomorrow, but Rey just had to do it now. And the music we hear is very gnarly, I would say. We have the very low, like double bass, and it sounds so gritty. I think it's very satisfying.
It gives me the feeling of like, you know, on the open seas, the sort of like piratey feel, the adventure feel. It made me think of like Sinbad, Legend of the Seven Seas, which is an animated movie, came out in 2003. Love that movie. And even though the sound, the scores are completely different, but the sound is similar to Hans Zimmer's Pirates of the Caribbean soundtracks, where you have that sort of, you know, sort of call to adventure here. And at least at this point, Rey is answering the call, maybe a little bit sooner than her friends would have liked, but that's what it made me feel, while still having the Star Wars feel to it, because obviously John Williams is the master.
Right. I mean, I think tying it to like Sinbad or tying it to Pirates of the Caribbean is actually quite fitting. I'm going to play this without the dialogue, just from the For Your Consideration soundtrack. And you really hear the, like, I don't know, it sounds like someone is on on choppy seas. I don't know how else to describe it. It has like a kind of a lilt, like a back and forth, like it's an ostinato, so it's a repeating bit of music. Like it kind of rocks back and forth. Yeah. And this is like, it is obviously super associated with what is happening on screen. And in the catalog, Frank calls it Across the Seas. I don't think we hear it in any other film. We don't hear it in any other film. It's basically this Rey in the skimmer music.
Yeah, I think the only time we really get a lot of water in another film is Camino, and no one's sailing in that one.
Right, but even with Camino, we get like a little bit of the rocking back, the waves kind of rocking, like, like, you know.
I wonder if the Clone Wars does when they go on. Why can't I think of the planet that Admiral Akbar is from? Because that's their aquatic species. So I think it's like season 3 of Clone Wars. So I'd have to see what they did there. But that would be the only other thing I could think of where it would have a water, you know, a water adventures in the water, I should say.
Yeah, I'd be interested to check that out too. I feel like in not just in Star Wars, but like in films and film scoring in general, I feel like some of the most, I think there is a clear sonic language or trends or something that accompany both in the water, both water stuff. There are certain musical tropes that accompany water things. In Star Wars, we get underwater, and that is its own. That is a different thing where it's like is kind of like underwater in Harry Potter too, and the other thing is flying. Like I think flying music often has like, it often sounds just so, it's usually pretty well represented, I think. It's usually pretty well represented, flying, like soaring, and we get that in like Solo: A Star Wars Story and lots of other things. So I don't know. There's something about like, maybe it's travel, maybe like there's something about the repetitive kineticism of traveling that makes it easy to score. Not saying that it's easy to score this, but like, I don't know.
Yeah.
Scores that do traveling are often, I think successful parts of the score.
Yeah, and I'm really glad you brought out flight because I think the first thing that came to mind when it's talking about like flying was Hans Zimmer's flight in Man of Steel, right? There's a sort of heavenly aspect to it. Like there's a challenge, but it's like a welcoming sense. Whereas when it comes to water, I think there's this foreboding aspect to it. And I think because there's this romanticization of flying, whereas when it comes like to the ocean, we've only explored 5% of it. There's a bunch of mystery and death, and that's why I think you have those bases. You sort of feel that weight. I say that as a bass singer, so you sort of feel that sort of like thumping in your chest or in your ears when you get that.
Yeah, without doing like an extensive immediate review of all the different depictions of flying and being on the water, it feels like you're right. Like flying is usually depicted as more freeing and just kind of magical and transcendent and fun, whereas being on the water, it tends to bring more danger. Yeah. I don't know. Listeners, drop in examples of your favorite flying music or on the water music, and so we can all assess how dangerous they sound. Okay, so I'm going to keep playing now. Actually, I'll go back to the... So we hear the little flutes go like, the little really fast flute line that goes up. The flute filigree, that is very Star Wars. We are going to get it more times these minutes, and all throughout the movie. I'm noting also the timpani, boom, boom, and the brass, da, 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 which I think is reminiscent of Kylo Ren stuff, because it's like. Like it's got those half steps. Yeah, it's very evocative, and I think it's unambiguously danger music. Yeah, I'll keep playing.
Yeah,
go ahead.
Which I think so. I think that's very important, especially bringing up the similarities between like Kylo Ren's theme, because in the novelization, I think we're a little bit before where it says that, but Finn, it says Finn knew exactly what she was thinking. She was going after the Sith alone in a misguided attempt to keep her friends from harm. Stupid, wonderful, maddening Rey. And skip a little bit. It says, "We're going to lose her," he said, his voice rising. Loser in italics, not necessarily to death, but possibly to something worse.
Yeah, like obviously going to the dark side, or something happening with her mind. I think in just the last set of minutes, I think it was Rey said something in Kylo, or it's the scene where Rey's like, "Everyone seems to know who I am, but no one knows," or something. Do you think it takes Finn a while to understand that Rey is struggling with darkness?
So, I was going to say this for the end, but I have a theory. Well, because this was something in Legends. There was forced empathy, where basically people were able to read the impressions of an individual's feelings and general emotional state. And so there's kind of this already, I've been listening to The Living Force where, they talk about Jedi able to feel that off of them. So I think it's just a canon thing as well. But to me, like, Finn is very much a Force empath. The way he talks about the Force as a feeling, the way the books have described him, how he, thinks about Rey and Rose and Poe and,
Like Imri Kantaros from High Republic.
yes, just like Emery, except I think Emery's is just way stronger with his Force empathy. So that's how I imagine Finn as well. And so I think he feels this sort of struggle. And while he may not know the specifics, which I believe by the time he gets to like further on in the film when I believe he does know without knowing that it's like the Palpatine of it all. Yeah.
Yeah. I like thinking about it that way. I'm trying to reconcile that with Finn kind of being like, no, the dark stuff is all Kylo, and Rey being like, it's kind of me too. She's not saying it, but maybe it's after that conversation he understands that. Yeah.
Yeah. And then there's another part. I don't think I have the page pulled, but there's a part in the Rise of Skywalker novelization where Rey says that Finn would be like Leia and not be tempted by the dark. And I think if you go along with that line of thinking, that's why Finn thinks it's Kylo that's pushing the darkness and not in Rey, because it's not in him like that.
Oh, interesting. Yeah, it's been a long time since I've read the novelization and I didn't remember that part. But so maybe Finn is more steadfast or something. Yeah, because Rey definitely does feel the temptation. Or maybe that it could also be Rey's perception of Finn. Like, who knows if what Rey thinks Finn is also accurate.
Right. I think a lot of people, like how different people based on genetics and things have different proclivities. Like, like if you have a family history of alcoholism, you may be more predisposed to be alcoholics. And but also, like good things too, like, like athletics or musical talent or anything like that. So it could be where, who knows what Finn's family history is besides J.J. Abrams and Chris Terrio, who wrote the script that they said was going to talk about Finn's origins, but I'm not going to get into that. But who knows where, like, maybe Finn doesn't struggle with maybe like that anger or rage that maybe like the Skywalkers might have, or Rey through Palpatine might have, but maybe it's something else entirely. I mean, you could say maybe it was the fear given where he was in The Force Awakens, and maybe part of The Last Jedi, where he's afraid like Rey's going to get hurt or he's going to lose Rey. Maybe it's that kind of part.
And I mean, going back to the way that he left, being a stormtrooper, he did have the fortitude to do that by himself, to make that choice by himself. So there's definitely a unique strength in that decision. Yeah. I'm also thinking about, like I think Rey being able to shoot lightning from her fingers, like the only way that makes sense to me is just a family, like a little bit of a family gift in that regard.
I'm not gonna lie, that moment got me hype in theaters. I was just
too.
like, oh,
Yeah, me too.
that's my girl.
Yeah,
and then she was like, oh, Chewie. And I was like, they not about to kill Chewie.
So many emotions in that moment. Yeah, I really loved that moment, and I loved that they went for that specifically because it was so shocking. I think for the average Force user, not that any Force users are like average, but like for the average Force user, I think it would probably take a lot more training and specifically like dark side training to be able to achieve shooting lightning from your fingers. But I think also maybe Rey was fast tracked in that particular talent.
Which unless you're
she can
playing a video
of course she
game.
can overcome it. Oh,
Yeah, unless you're
in
playing
video
a
games,
video
can
game.
anyone do
Yeah.
it? Or
Well, in some of the older ones, oh yeah. Like you could one of my favorite games, Jedi Knight, Jedi Academy, you start off as a student in Luke's Jedi Academy. And they give you like points after you complete missions, and you can put them in light side powers, which is like force heal, force protect, force not force sense, that's a generic one that everyone gets. And then you can put them into like dark side powers, which is force lightning, force choke, force drain. And then, depending on how many points, how you balance your points, you'll hear Luke say like, oh, you're tending towards the dark side. You might want to watch that, kind of thing.
That's really funny. Wait, really quick. I want to go back to what's the screenplay that Chris Terrio and J.J. Abrams said they were writing Finn's backstory?
So in a Vanity Fair article that came out, I think December 3rd, 2019, so a few weeks before the movie came out to the public, and I think maybe like 2-ish weeks before the premiere, they said that they were going to talk, or J.J. Abrams said he was going to talk about Finn's origins in The Rise of Skywalker. We're going to learn where Rey comes from, we're going to Poe comes from, and while it was hinted at in the Force Awakens, we're going to talk about more specifically where Finn comes from. And noticeably, that is absent from the film.
Yeah.
And I do not think that J.J. Abrams would go on such a big publication as Vanity Fair and deliberately say that, which gives further credence to my theory that, well, and I also believe that he did not pick the final cut of The Rise of Skywalker. And I don't think anybody really went into there knowing it, because the other thing is, given John Boyega's reaction afterwards, he was very heavily promoting like filming the movie while on his Instagram. And so like, because one of them, he posted like a picture of his hands, and he had like some blood on them, and they're like dirty, and he's like, I just filmed the most intense stunt. I don't see that in anything that's happened in this film.
Oh, yeah, no, I don't either. Oh, that's really disappointing. I didn't know about that.
Disney, hire me for your legal team and then let me in the vault.
You're not supposed to say that second part yet. Okay, I'm going to continue. You're hearing the struggle. Oops.
What the hell was she thinking?
Well, we gotta go after her.
Get the Falcon fixed and get out there as fast as we can.
Obviously, we changed perspectives there, and I like how the music goes back. Like, first of all, it's not as loud because we're not with Rey anymore, showing that like the music is for Rey's journey right now, but we still have hints of, like, we still hear softly the original do, 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 the Across the Seas motif, because they are kind of, well, first they are next to the water, but it's almost like if the music we were hearing were like diegetically the water. It's like they're next to it, but they're not like in it. They're not as close, but we still hear it faintly.
After her.
Here.
Get the Falcon fixed and get out there as fast as we
No,
can.
we're gonna lose her.
Look, she left us. What do you want to do, swim?
She's not herself. You have no idea what she's fighting.
And you do?
Now that's the question.
Yeah, I do. And so does Leia. Well, I'm not Leia. That's for damn sure.
That's quite a diss, but true.
Yeah, and the book handles that slightly differently, how that scene ends. But before we go there, I want to go back to Rey, because what I think was interesting, especially when I look at this just in these 5 minutes, going back to The Force Awakens, when they land on Takodana, Rey said she didn't know that much green exists in the whole galaxy. Go to The Last Jedi, when it rains on Ahch-To, Rey reaches out in her poncho, like touching the water in the rain. And I don't know the weather patterns on Jakku, but based on her reaction, I don't think she's seen really rain before, or that much. So there was that joy. And now here she is, not in awe at the sea, that who knows if she's seen in this year in between The Last Jedi and The Rise of Skywalker. But she's just actively fighting it. and that's it is such a distinct change from where she was in the previous two movies when it came to to nature outside of a sandy planet.
That's a really good point. So what do you make of her like she's literally like anyone would be fighting against this, but like her
Yeah,
especially
she's
having
aggressive.
she's aggressive. Okay, so like she's not like okay, I see what I see. She's not just like trying to work with the water or something. She's like actively either defending herself from it or like actively fighting her way through it to get to the place that she needs. Like it's an
Yeah.
antagonist or something. Like she's doing she's doing not what she did with the Vexus.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I like that. I wonder
Yeah, and
now like how Luke would cross this ocean, this sea right now.
uh,
Or Rey, but like
huh.
later in her journey. I don't know. Because I do
Yeah,
wonder if like some of her journey, like some of what she's going through in the sea right now is also influenced by her agitated emotional state.
mm-hmm. Yeah, I don't know how well Luke could do. Luke's a pilot. I don't know how he would do on seafaring. You know, at least I mean, he grew. They were both growing up on desert planets, so I would imagine. Well, I guess it also depends on where in the journey because by the time we get to the Return of the Jedi, Luke is almost 5 years removed from A New Hope. So maybe then he might do a bit better. But if you go only a year, that's in the middle of the distance between A New Hope and Empire. So maybe he wouldn't have done as well. But if it's like third movie, I think he probably might do a little bit better because at least most of the time he had a better handle on his emotions because he actually had you know, a dedicated tutor at one point and then found Jedi text. So, instead of, getting yelled at by an old hermit for, a few days or a
Yeah.
few weeks, depending.
Yeah. It just occurs to me that a lot of the times when we see water in Star Wars, and I'm mostly thinking of the cartoons, what's threatening about the water is the creatures and also the Phantom Menace. What's threatening about the water is the creatures in the water. And here we don't have creatures. The creatures aren't the threat. It's the water itself. And there's something I like about that where it's not like where it's plainly that the water is dangerous enough. Like we don't need other creatures, but it feels very like, I don't know, Rey against nature here.
Yeah.
Yeah, no big fish or anything. Or that really
Well,
cool
there.
thing from the Bad Batch, that like bioluminescent creature. I forgot what that was, but that was cool. But yeah, none of that here, unless it's off camera.
And then for that last that dig that Finn gets in with Poe, it's a little bit different in the book. Because in the movie you see Finn just walk away and Poe look hurt by that statement before he turns around. And in the book it says Poe recoiled as if struck and guilt pierced Finn. That had been too harsh, too close to the truth of Poe's worries and fears. He should have known better. Before he could apologize, Poe tossed the Nox to him and walked away.
Yeah, that is a very pointed barb that does. Yeah, I could see that. And it's like when you're really close to someone, you know the things that would hurt them the most.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I like how the book handles that. And I think it's well played, but I think it also just is maybe not fully, like I don't fully recognize it on its own. Maybe because I'm just focusing on like the sick burn that it was.
Yeah, I mean, there are things that happen in between Poe, Rey, and Finn that are like absolutely fantastic, and I'm like, I want more of this. Give me more of this. And then there are some things where I was just like, I feel like they wouldn't say that. And there was one in like the earlier part where they find out Poe was a spice runner, and they're obviously shocked and surprised by that. And then he hits back Finn like, you're a stormtrooper, you were a scavenger to Rey, and like neither of them had a choice in that matter.
Yeah.
Whereas Poe, especially, he had a choice. He was just being a rambunctious teenager. which, like fair, but, I feel like Poe wouldn't like poke fun at his friend's past like that when they were forced into it kind of thing.
Yeah, no, I
But
agree with you.
yeah.
And I feel like of those three, like Scavenger was the weakest diss. It's like, what do you do? You just have that word in the back of your head? You're ready to be like, hey, you're a scavenger. I don't know. He could have said like orphan or something. I guess Finn probably might be too. But
guess
yeah, I agree that part.
technically he is too.
Okay,
I guess
that's true.
technically.
No, you're right. Yeah, yeah. Okay, I'll keep playing. And so at this point, okay, this is after the diss. Some regretful strings. Now we're back on Kefir. We're back in the sea. And it's not really, this may not be immediately obvious, but the first time we hear that, it's in A minor. It's like, and here we have it in B flat minor. So it's actually escalated up a half step. So yeah, there's a little escalation. Okay. Ooh, yeah, missed this important part. Okay, so we hear this, listen for the brass going, da da da. Just right there at the end. Da, da, da. So we're with Rey at this point. And then now we're cutting back to where Finn is on the cliff. Right here. And we hear that echoed in the oboe softer. And to me, that is like he's getting, it's like this little tiny cell, this little phrase of music, this little figure has been passed on from where Rey is to where Finn is.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So it's like he recognizes what's going on.
There's another skimmer.
Well, now we're on the Death Star wreckage. Is there anything, before we move on, should we talk about what just happened?
So I also think it's interesting in the book, they kind of do this out of order. Because where Jannah says, Finn, there's another skimmer, happens, and then they go to what's the planet that they're on? The
Kefir?
Resistance base.
Oh.
The Resistance base.
Agent
I can't remember
Kloss?
the planet. Yes, they go back to Agent Kloss, and it's Leia saying a speech, and Luke as a Force ghost interrupting her, which is also a little bit of a little funny sibling back and forth where Leia's like, because Luke is telling her basically like it's time for you to do what you got to do with Ben, and Leia's just like, you're starting to become a pest. And I just like, this is a very funny thing. But then it goes back after that scene to Rey, and this is Rey in the water, where I kind of like missed this part because I had jumped down to when she's actually walking through the throne room in the Death Star. But this little paragraph, I think, also goes back to what we were talking about with Rey in the water. Said, before Rey had touched down on Takodana with Han Solo, the only body of water she had ever seen was the slimy trough at Nema Outpost. Then on Ahch-To, she always eyed the sea with a bit of distrust. The waves of water were terrifying and alien to her, and she knew she'd be facing her most unpredictable enemy yet.
Oh. So now she is here, facing her most unpredictable enemy yet.
Yeah.
Oh. That's really cool. Yeah, like as someone, I'm like really scared of water, so I'm feeling this for sure.
Yeah, I'll say I have a healthy distrust of the ocean and large bodies of water. I have a fear of Lake Lanier in Georgia. That is a fear.
Specifically that lake.
Yes.
Why?
That lake has a body count.
Oh.
And you're always talking about how people go out there and then, so there was like a couple of survivors, and you believe these stories as you will, but there were survivors that talk about like they had fallen into the water off of their boat or something unexpectedly, and they felt like when they were trying to swim back up as if hands were dragging them down. Believe that if you will, but there have been enough strange occurrences and deaths at that lake. I will never go there.
Noted. I feel no need to overcome that fear in that particular lake. Yeah. No thanks. Although I do have one friend, shout out to Christina, who I bet might actually be tempted by that, which is terrifying. Christina, I'm not going to let you do that.
Yeah, try to tell them at all odds, no.
Lake Lanier. Okay. Yeah, noted. I'm going to keep playing, but we're not going to hear music for another 20, 30 seconds. But it's going to be the kind of ominous, creepy sounds of the Death Star wreckage. Weird growling, groaning. So Rey's climbing. Put some images on screen. Part falls. Music's about to come in. It's another one of those that we heard earlier. Another filigree. And that part is actually, it accompanies a moment where Rey is jumping to like the next beam. So it is, the music is kind of Mickey Mousing. I don't know if you're familiar with Mickey Mousing in music. It's like a film scoring technique. It's mostly, the name comes from like Mickey Mouse cartoons. It's mostly like, it's very big in animation, especially like old school stuff where the music syncs with the action on screen. So it'll be like you're walking down the stairs and it's going like blong, 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 blong. And then like something, it's like a very scoring to the frame type of thing. It's like you're falling, someone on screen is falling and the music's going like, pew! That type of thing. So this is borderline Mickey Mousing here, which, the title suggests, the name of this technique suggests that it's like a silly or bad thing, but it's not. It just literally comes from like cartoons. So that's why it's called that. It happens in films all the time. And this is just a little instance of that, I think. Here it is. And it's effective. Now the music stalls there briefly. And that's as Rey is looking up at the next ledge and like sizing it up. And now she's ready to keep going. Right there, it's climaxed. The music got louder and stronger, and now I'll put an image on screen. This is when Rey is finally in the throne room. She has, Or is she in the throne room? No, I'm not sure. No, she's not exactly in the throne room. She's on a safe ledge. It's hard to it's so much harder without, when I can't show like the movie playing for copyright purposes, but there's also no dialogue. So I'm like trying to narrate the action on screen that is kind of hard to describe, except jumping and climbing on stuff. And then here, this rain sounds so loud. she is climbing into the throne room, and we get a Dutch angle. Okay, I'll end it there. I mean, actually, there's only 3 more seconds left of these minutes. Okay, yeah. So obviously we have to talk about the end part.
Yeah. So when I was watching this, and you brought up strings earlier, and the strings I think is very important here, but it's like with obviously the Death Star being destroyed and you don't have any functioning lights and you have, the dead stormtrooper armor and it's all dusty and dirty and the water, everything. And then you bring in the strings of the Imperial March. Like this is a mausoleum of death. Those are, or mausoleum of death and evil. That's what popped up into my head when like I was listening to and watching this part as, obviously we know the Emperor died, and then for lack of a better term, Vader died here before, Anakin Skywalker came back to the forefront and then, died here. So, it's sort of like this sort of death of evil and the legacies that are in front of Rey, the legacy of Palpatine or the legacy of Skywalker, where the last time they came to a clash was right here.
Yeah, it's almost like the place is echoing with like a sense, like there are memories, there are things still lingering in it, and the music reminds us that there's still like what it kind of tells us something that Rey must be feeling in this moment, which is like the legacy of what has happened here, and like you said, like the Emperor and Vader / Anakin. The strings here are so, like, first, the obvious contrast between this and when she's on the choppy waters, which is like here, the music is a lot more intimate. It doesn't need to be super big, even though she might be feeling really big, scary emotions. It's still more reserved. Like, it is very internal, and it's also kind of tentative, and it's also sort of exploratory, I think. The way that the strings come in after she she sees the throne room, we get the Dutch angle where it's like the camera's tilted. Strings come in even before the Imperial March part. We get just some other, I'll play it. It's about... Okay. Here we go. Very tentative. And here is the Imperial March. What's funny is it's such a specific quote. Like, it's not just the Imperial March. I think it's instantly recognizable to a lot of people as Imperial March from the end of Return of the Jedi. Because we don't, up until that point, we don't hear the Imperial March played on like instruments like that. And with that particular orchestration, instrumentation, which is, we have the harp. Let me get a harp sound on here. Doing like little descending minor scale while the violins play artificial harmonics. And I think it's funny, actually, I looked back at what our last episode was, and we also had a part that had artificial harmonics because we were talking about, I think it was Beckett's death in Solo: A Star Wars Story. And I just think it's funny that now you have minutes again, and I'm about to reference the minutes that we talked about before, because they both use artificial harmonics on the violin. So I'll play an example of what that sounds like. But It's very high and glassy sounding. So it's played like, okay. I don't know if you can see. My finger is very lightly touching the string at the top. You might notice that I'm just moving my hand all around the fingerboard rather than using different fingers, which is normally how you see violinists play. Like, I could just use different fingers for all the notes, but with artificial harmonics, you can't really do that. So I'll explain briefly what those even are. First, harmonics. So I'll skip all the physics part of what harmonics are and just say for now that harmonics on string instruments are used for usually very high notes that have a certain pure and glassy tone to them. Notice there's no vibrato, like it's not luscious sounding. There's none of that like tremor that you often hear when violinists play. So it kind of sounds like whistly or fluty. A natural harmonic is a harmonic that is played using the natural nodes of the instrument. And so the nodes of the instrument are just like, imagine you have a string in your hand and you're holding it at two ends. The nodes are like where your hands are holding the string. The space in between the nodes is the part that vibrates. So on the violin, that would be the bridge, which is down here, and the nut, which is up here. Above the nut, the strings don't vibrate, and below the bridge, the strings don't vibrate. It's just the space in between where the string is vibrating. So that's like where you're holding the ends of the string. When you can create a third node on the violin by lightly pressing down on the string at a particular spot that makes an overtone pop out. If you're actually into this, there's a whole chart on Wikipedia showing where on the violin the nodes of natural harmonics are. Like it'll say if you, harmonic number 2 is if you play it here, it's going to play this many cents above the open string. Don't worry about that. But a few common spots are they just ring out in a very specific way. And in these, this one, it's just dividing the string in half. You'll find a node for a harmonic. So an artificial harmonic, first of all, regular harmonics are used in a lot of music where you might go you might use it for an effect or whatever. But since there's a limited number of where the natural harmonics are, you can't play all the notes just with natural harmonics. So because of the finite amount of audible pitches you can hear from natural harmonics, you can do artificial harmonics, which is when you artificially shorten the length of the string by creating an artificial nut. Instead of the string ending here, all the way here, you can put a finger down, and it's basically like using a capo on a guitar. So you're shortening the string by putting a finger down somewhere, and then you use another finger to do the part where you lightly press it. So on the violin, the only one I can really figure out how to play without having a monstrously large hand is first and fourth finger. So, and that's normally how violinists will play natural harmonics, is with the first and fourth finger. That way you can basically capo yourself up And so that's what's being used here. So that's artificial harmonics. They can sound really creepy and really cool.
Yeah, I did not know any of that. But when you said a few things, you said one that it reminds people of the end of Return of the Jedi, and I think specifically, if I remember correctly, that's when Vader dies.
Correct.
They repeat that And I think the first time it might be horns, and the second time it might have been a piano, like all in that sort of death scene.
Well,
Which
actually, I will play from the score from Return of the Jedi, so we can remind ourselves what that sounds like. Oh, that bass. Oh, I forgot how good that low bass is. Yes, let's hear a little bit before that. So are you referring to like a bit before that happens? Do you hear it in brass?
I think it's I remember the scene, so it's like towards the end of it, um, where at least I thought it was a brass, and then I thought it was piano afterwards because it didn't sound like it wasn't that high. Um, it was probably an octave or so up from the traditional Imperial March. So it was probably in, if I was singing, it would probably be in like a alto range.
Yeah, I can't remember exactly the order and the timing of that, and if it's different from the soundtrack. Yeah. Although I feel like I just was listening to the death scene, but I was like watching it on YouTube. So you know how like sometimes on YouTube they have to pitch the music, like they have to speed the scene up or
Yeah.
whatever to a point. So it was like all in the wrong key and everything. And I was like, oh,
Yeah, maybe that's what I remembered because I think the last time I saw it was on YouTube because I don't think I've seen Return of the Jedi on TV in a minute. And I think the last time I watched it, I got to see it actually on the big screen for the first time at Celebration London. So,
was that at the same time that they were doing it in movie theaters? Because I remember I got to see it like at Cinemark like last year, 2
yeah,
years ago.
I think it was like started to kick it off then for the 40th anniversary. So they did like a D23 screening. And so like a few of us became D23 members so we could buy tickets so we could all go.
Nice. Yeah, when it came to theaters, I saw it twice, and very exciting.
Yeah, my state gets horribly represented when it comes to like these special premieres or like releasing like the Acolyte premiere if there wasn't one in my state. And I'm just like, my brother was like, there's not a big Star Wars presence here. I'm like, well, I'm here.
What state is that?
I'll find people. I live in Michigan.
Did you get Rogue One? I mean, like when it was re-released before Andor.
I don't remember that, so I'm going to say no.
That's a
I
bummer.
think
I definitely
maybe
take it for
Chicago's
granted.
the only one in the Midwest that did, which I'm like, I'm not driving 4 hours.
Yeah. Yeah, I do feel lucky to be like around Los Angeles for sure, because we tend to get the stuff. Yeah. So the Imperial March, like artificial harmonic thing, I actually have a few other examples pulled up of things, other places in Star Wars where now like that vibe, that sound, I think is so iconic that it has now been used in, several other spots after Return of the Jedi. One of them being here in The Rise of Skywalker. And then also I want to play the Bad Batch episode was the cavalry in the finale, the season 3 finale of the Bad Batch. Let's see, when Tarkin is ordering that the Mount Tantus clone facility needs to be shut down and saying the remaining funds and assets are going to be relocated to Project Stardust, which we know is Death Star #1. I will play. I'll play that.
Hemlock's feelings have cost us enough. shutter this facility indefinitely and redistribute all funding to Project Stardust.
So I think it's pretty unambiguously trying to do the same thing. It's obviously it's doing it slower, so it's not doing it exactly, but like I don't know. What do you think? Do you
Yeah,
do
I
you
could
buy it?
definitely hear it. Yeah. Yeah, I could definitely hear it, and I think it's also very fitting. Given so with Return of the Jedi, you have the death of Vader. With this scene, you have the echoes of the death of Vader, and then the death of the Emperor. Technically, kind of, sort of timey-wimey stuff.
Yeah.
And then here you have obviously you had the death of Hemlock, but you also have the death of this cloning program for Project Necromancer. Death Necromancer. And now you have Tarkin relating it to moving those funds and resources to the Death Star. So it just seems like death is the through line here.
Yeah, I think that, okay, that's interesting. I'll pin that thought because I was thinking like, well, the death of Vader is obviously much more important than the death of Hemlock. But then I'm also thinking like, it's not necessarily like a death theme for good guys. It necessarily, it is something more ambiguous than that. And then I'm going to play now the part in Solo: A Star Wars Story after Han shoots Beckett at the end. I'll play it directly from the soundtrack, Maul's Call / Parting Ways. And now here we're not going to hear the Imperial March in Solo: A Star Wars Story. We're going to hear Beckett's theme, or like the gang theme, but the vibe of it, I think, is definitely. I think it's definitely trying to recall this. But I don't know, listeners, you can be the judge here. Okay, so Han shoots Beckett. Solo has such a good score. Yeah, so there, those are the examples. 4 times that we're hearing the artificial harmonics doing the Imperial March or something similar. But yeah, it's like it's some creepy death music. I'm not exactly sure. I mean, I'd be interested to hear it even somewhere else with the context slightly different, so I could piece together what thematically the different showrunners or composers are trying to do.
Yeah, I wonder if we look at other deaths, if we'd find something similar. I am fairly confident that's not present at Qui-Gon's death. Don't quote me on that, but I feel like that one sticks out of my mind. I know that one's
It's
there,
definitely
and I
not.
figure
It's
I figure it wouldn't be there for Satine either, because I think that through line is Obi-Wan.
and it's not text death.
Yeah.
You know what? Now that I think about it, I think it can only happen in deaths where there's dialogue after the death. Like it can't be like a sudden death where someone is killed immediately. Also can't be a death where like I'm making up the rules now, but based on the pattern, it also seems to not be a death where the body, like the dead person, their body goes elsewhere. It seems like there is a conversation happening. Like you're able to still either be with the person or have some sort of closeness, stillness, like a middle moment of stillness.
I wonder if it's there at Obi-Wan and Maul at his death in Rebels.
I don't remember.
Yeah, because there's a little bit of a conversation before Maul dies. So I wonder.
Oh, yeah, I want to check that out after after we finish recording. Yeah, Obi-Wan Maul, for sure. We're writing this down.
And then there's one other thing I want to say about the scene, because you said lingers and memory, which is in the novelization, which this part is a lot shorter than the movie, but it says once Rey recognizes this was a throne, she said, this had been the Emperor's throne room. Luke had fought Darth Vader here, and the energy or maybe memory of that battle still lingered. She closed her eyes and sensed terror, pain, regret, and a determination to save someone who was deeply loved.
Yeah, that's kind of a beautiful reflection. I'm having like a solemn moment. Like I'm trying to, yeah. I mean, I think there was no way for the movie to go other than Rey taking this journey alone to the wreckage. Like it's something that she had to do. But I think, like, I guess I never asked you on more broadly about this movie, how you felt about Rey Palpatine versus Rey Nobody or whatnot. Like I think this movie I wanted to see it deal a little bit more with the effects of her, I don't know, flirting with darkness. But I did like that she had some darkness.
Yeah, so I guess when the movie first started, going back to just my journey with Rey, I think I was originally on board with Rey Kenobi, because I think there would have been a beautiful poetry of a Skywalker, whether that be Leia or Luke, training Rey a Kenobi, which they'd be like, well, how did a Kenobi get there? Like, one, okay, Obi-Wan had a sibling, so it could have been that, maybe, or hey, Obi-Wan and Satine, Corky Kreese, truther over here. You never know what could have happened. And so then I think there was also a part of me that it was like, okay, maybe Rey Skywalker, because then you'll have the, still keeping it a family kind of duel between cousins at that point. And then The Last Jedi came out and it was like Rey Nobody. And I'm like, I'm on board with that. And then we got Rey Palpatine. And I was just like, okay, I guess I don't love it. Just because, and this is why I never understand the argument of she should keep that last name and do the work of like rehabilitating that name to the galaxy, because it's like, okay,
I haven't actually heard that argument.
Oh yeah. Yeah. It's a terrible argument, because one, it's not her responsibility to clean up that name. And also,
That's
it
horrifying.
would take generations to do that, for all the damage that Palpatine did to the galaxy across 2/3 generations, like one generation directly, maybe a second generation indirectly, and a third generation directly. Like that's more than one person can do. Because even think about how much good the Jedi did prior to the events of the Clone Wars, and all it took was, Palpatine's word to discredit them to the galaxy, and then about 20 years for them almost to be forgotten entirely after 10,000 years of work. So, I just don't understand why people. Well, I know it just comes from a hatred of Rey being a Skywalker, which I think is corny, but I think it thematically fits Star Wars. I thought she was going to call her new Jedi Order the Skywalkers, but it's
She
fine.
still
It's
might,
canon.
right?
Yeah, she
Unless it's
still
been
might.
already- yeah, she still might.
Maybe that's maybe when you become a master, you become a Skywalker. I don't know, but it's fine. I think it's way better than her going by Rey Palpatine. That makes no sense.
I can't even fathom that argument, or that's so silly to me. I don't even feel that I can, I don't know, devote time to it almost. I'm sorry if anyone listening thinks that she should rehabilitate the Palpatine name, but the thing is also, I think that would also be such a waste of time to spend any time trying to rehabilitate the Palpatine name when there's so much other stuff in the galaxy that she could be doing.
No one would ever want to deal with her. She would be unable to rebuild the Jedi Order because with that last name, no parent would ever willingly give their child to her. And even if on the outset, like you found some force sensitive teenagers or adults, most of them will probably have heard of Palpatine in some way, shape, or form prior to him broadcasting his message to the galaxy in the Rise of before the Rise of Skywalker, technically, I guess, in Fortnite.
I'm sorry, but that name is besmirched for a long time, for the foreseeable future, and I feel like only like edgelords will take it on in the Star Wars galaxy. Like, Anyway, is there any, like, we're at the end of the minutes, but is there anything else about like Finn, Jannah, this set of minutes, this movie that, I mean, now's the chance for us to discuss it.
So I've obviously talked about Finn being force sensitive here, but here's the other thing. Jannah is also force sensitive. And the novelization gives us a clue into that as where is okay, yep, here, found it. So obviously this is after she defeats Palpatine. Like, you know, the thing has blown up or whatever. It says the Emperor was no more. Rey gazed at the tumbled wreckage of the cathedral around her. She couldn't feel her arms and legs. Vaguely, she heard the clink of her lightsabers hitting the ground. When had she let go of them? She reached for the Force one last time. Some of her friends were surely still up there somewhere. She sensed Finn and Jannah?
Huh.
And then it goes to Finn on the Falcon, where he stopped and was like, Rey, where he sensed that she was gone. And so it's like, she didn't sense Poe. She didn't sense Chewie, even though Finn, Jannah, and Chewie were on the same ship. She didn't sense Lando. She sensed Finn and Jannah, which leads me further to the theory that every stormtrooper that resisted, at least like of their own volition, were force sensitive in some way, shape, or form. And I don't know whether Palpatine started recruiting, like trying to find force sensitive kids to make his army with, and then tried to do the brainwashing, and it took for some and it didn't take for others because maybe the force spoke more strongly to them, or whether it's just that the stormtroopers that defected were force sensitive while the others weren't.
I mean, I like that theory. Yeah, I like that theory that that the stormtroopers that defected were force sensitive because they were able to sense the will of the Force. Yeah, I guess I've never thought of it that way, and now I'm going to think about it moving forward. I mean, until there's like a ton of evidence to the contrary, I don't see why not.
Yeah.
And I do like the idea of just like there being more force sensitive people that are recognized. Like maybe it's a gradient. So like, of course there are, like, the movies only really talk about the ones who are like really off the scale, but like, I think something exciting both about The Last Jedi and about The Rise of Skywalker and Rogue One was just seeing different levels and manifestations of force sensitivity, like with Broom Boy in The Last Jedi, and then also here, like, yeah, stormtroopers, now for sure. Like, I like that.
Good old Broom Boy.
Yeah.
Good old Tamiri Blag.
Yeah. Have there been any? I don't know if there's been any like books about him or a comic. If he's shown up in any comics or anything.
Not that I know of. My hope is that after the Rise of Skywalker, Finn and Rose went to Canto Bight to free those kids, and that once Tamiri is a little bit older, because I imagine he's like 7-ish, and after Finn's got some training with Rey or Ahsoka or Sabine or or Ezra. I would love an Ezra Finn conversation. I think that would just be hilarious.
Yeah. It would be.
That Finn's Padawan would be Tamiri.
Oh, that's interesting. Yeah, I'm on board with that. I think Finn and Rose should go back to Canto Bight and do that. Exactly that. I mean,
And
yeah, especially like in the Canto Bight book, there's like, they also talk more about, the people that live on there and the slavery they endure, or at least the servitude.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a place in need of rehabilitation.
Oh,
Is Canto
absolutely.
Bight. Anyway, I'm going to go over the themes from these minutes. We heard neutral conversation music, which is just an incidental motif. We hear the Force theme, and then Across the Seas and the Imperial March. And then if you're following along in the soundtrack, you can hear some of this music in track 4, The Old Death Star. And also, if you have the For Your Consideration soundtrack, this is track 12, Off the Waterfront. Mainly the sailing, the Kefir, tumultuous seas music. Kris, are you ready for the Star Wars Music Minute Questionnaire? Your third time.
Oh, I'm ready.
Sweet. Okay, question number 1. In exactly 3 words, what does Star Wars sound like?
Ethereal, panoptic, and permeating.
I don't think anyone's ever said panoptic, for sure.
Ha ha.
I would love to know more about your word choice.
So I was like trying to think of the words to do it, and I eventually found them. And then I'm like, I'm essentially paraphrasing what Yoda says about the Force. It surrounds us, binds us, goes through us, and I'm just like, well, yeah, that's Star Wars music.
That's really good. Yeah, no, I like that. Yeah, goes through us, permeating. Yeah, that's great. Previously, you said a galactic symphony. A very different kind of answer, but Okay, question number 2 is, what is something related to Star Wars music or sound that you want to learn more about?
So I would love to, and I'm in the process of trying, but she was very busy. I would love to talk to either John Williams or Natalie Holt or anybody that's created Star Wars music, decliners, and say what. Well, I mean, honestly, any composer, but especially those in Star Wars, like walk me through the process of creating music, because I get creating when it comes to words, either in my job as an attorney or even just, writing fanfic, or like I know what that process is like when inspiration hits, but how is it for, music, because that's different. The feelings that you feel when you do it, like what are you imagining? What, like how does that inspiration kind of strike?
Including like, what technically are you doing? Like,
Yeah.
yeah,
From the birth of it to the technical process till you get to the end. And by the end, I mean when you have the orchestra and they're performing what you created.
yeah, so many steps. That I also would very much like that. Yeah, for sure. I mean, yeah. I mean, it's kind of a question. It seems so obvious because like everyone kind of does want to know that, I
Hmm.
assume. But I think actually one other guest this season, Riley Silverman, a writer, also said something that reminded me of your answer, which was like that she understands how to write words, but like I think for any creative who knows how to create something in the medium that they're comfortable with, it can feel like it's very so fascinating, like
Hmm.
to consider how people who work in different mediums do essentially the same thing, but also such a different thing. It can feel so like outside of what we do. Like I feel that way about people who know how to like make things with their hands, like make
Hmm.
furniture, make like pieces, like I don't know, like tangible things. Like I feel like it feels like magical to me. I'm like, how do you go from conceiving of like a table or and then it is a thing that I can touch event like
Hmm.
it seems so magical. Yeah. Your previous answers were You wanted a deeper dive into the motifs, and then specifically, you wanted to know about John Williams's mindset when he wrote his love themes, Across the Stars, Han Solo and the Princess, and Princess Leia's theme. Cool. Okay, question number 3 is, what is any score or soundtrack that you're fond of besides anything Star Wars?
So I'm a huge Michael Giacchino fan. So pretty much anything by him, especially since he's pretty much been present throughout my life in ways that I didn't even know. Like, because I knew Hans Zimmer, because, Lion King and The Prince of Egypt. Like, I knew he did those, but I didn't know until recently, like, that Michael Giacchino did The Incredibles or Sky High.
I'm doing a Lost rewatch currently, and like, oh yeah, Giacchino did that.
Yeah. But so he did Jurassic World Fallen Kingdom, and there's a track from that I absolutely love. It's World's Worst Bedtime Storyteller. And I don't know if you've seen Fallen Kingdom.
I haven't. I need to though.
Okay. So that one it has more of a horror tinge to it because a horror director did it. And so there's a part where the dinosaur, it was stalking the little girl throughout the house, but it eventually escapes towards the roof. And you have the rain falling, the lightning going, and the music is crescendoing, and it's like dun 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 dun, and it's just like so cool. And I was thinking about that track recently because I remember after I came home from seeing that movie, I was talking to my brother in the car, and I was like, you know what that would have been perfect for? Like in Batman versus Superman, right when Superman's like flying in the air, and then he comes down, like when Batman has the bat signal up there to summon him, and I like layered the music over that, and it was just like so cool.
Oh, you did? You did an edit of it?
Yeah, I just did it for like Snapchat because that's all I had at the time.
Yeah, that's so much work to put into a snap.
Yeah, but it was just like I had that idea in my head and I needed to get it out.
That's really cool. Yeah, I wish it were like on TikTok or YouTube so I could link to it, so I could see that.
I mean, I could make it. It's not that hard. I can do it.
I mean, I need to listen. I need to watch that movie is the thing. You said you also gave that answer your first time on the show, but you gave a few other answers too. You said in the past you've said Interstellar, Tron Legacy, Jurassic World Fallen Kingdom, and then also Prince of Egypt score and soundtrack, and How to Train Your Dragon. Which are all very solid choices for sure.
Yeah, Tron Legacy is also just so different because Daft Punk did it, and it's just so good.
It is really good. Yeah, I went on the Tron, the new, it's not new, it's not super new anymore, but like the Tron ride at Disney World last year or 2 years ago. And man, it's such a specific aesthetic, which actually some of the sets, like one of the sets, I should say, in The Rise of Skywalker reminds me of Tron, just like the hangar.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, where can people find you online?
You can find me at StarWarsLawyer on everything. TikTok, Instagram, YouTube, Twitter, Instagram, Threads. I guess if Threads is still a thing. I get notifications every once in a while. I don't know who is actually using it, but yeah.
And you have a podcast? Do you still have a podcast?
The recording still exists. Too Black, Too Nerdy. We haven't recorded an episode in a while. It's just been busy, and I don't know if it's coming back. We'll see what happens.
The episodes are still there if people want to listen to old episodes. Thank you so much.
I do have the There Are More of Us show, which you have been on.
Yeah.
That's
on your YouTube channel.
Hiatus. Yes, it is. It's been on hiatus while I've been in this musical.
Please tell me about the musical. I forgot about that.
So I'm in a community theater production of Guys and Dolls. I am playing Big Julie. Is that
like I've seen Guys and Dolls once, but it was a really, really long time ago. Is that something where you're utilizing your bass range?
Yes, because since it is a musical that came out in like the 50s, it does utilize baritones and basses a lot more than modern theatrical pieces, which is nice to be able to sing something in my range and not like, have to struggle to reach the upper echelons of baritone to be kind of in the ballpark. And then also because, like Big Julie is, sort of like this Al Capone character. He's like a villain in it. So then, I bring it down to I'll bring out the James Earl Jones bass
Nice.
while I'm talking. And then it's just, it's a lot of fun.
That's so fun. Yeah, is it being live streamed or anything?
Not being live streamed, I should get a recording. Hopefully they do a different recording because I know they recorded Sunday show, and I hope they do another recording this upcoming weekend because one, there were some technical issues we were having with sound. Oh, the other thing that was different, this is my first production with a live pit orchestra. It was a 13-piece
exciting.
orchestra. Yeah, all the other ones, it's just been like the rehearsal track, so that was different. So there was some the monitors in the pit were just stopped working maybe like a few minutes before the show started. So they tried a little bit to get them working. So I think there was that. So hopefully they record a different one. But when I get the recording, I'll see if I think they'll allow me to like share, but if not, I'll just show my friends.
Yeah, cool. It's actually, as a performer, it's a specifically like terrifying and annoying thing when your monitors go down or when you can't hear yourself or when you can't hear what's going on. It's because no one in the audience knows that that's the problem, and it's also hard to explain, but like that can attribute to like things sounding bad, because if you can't hear, like you need to be able to hear things in order to be able to like sing or play. Oh my gosh. Yeah. Anyway.
Yeah, because I was down in the trap, which is right next to the pit. And so I was waiting for the show to start, and I like walk over to pit. I was like, "What's going on?" And I was talking to the conductor, and like he, there's like a little bit of distance, so he's saying it to I think one of the horns players, and then the horn players relaying that to me, and I'm just like, "Oh, well, I can see why that's a problem."
Yeah, good luck with that. Yeah. Well, anyway, thank you so much for coming back on Star Wars Music Minute. It's been too long since we've chatted, so I'm glad we got a chance to do this.
Thank you for having me on again. This is great. I love coming on here.
Sweet. Well, listeners, I'll be back next week to talk about Rise of Skywalker minutes 76 through 80. You can find Star Wars Music Minute or my personal accounts on most of the places online. Links will be in the show notes. If you want to join my Discord server, there's also a link in the show notes for how to do that. And with that, may the Force be with you. Talk to you next week on Star Wars Music Minute.